Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. It's your boy Shifty coming at you with another one. Today we're going to do my first and maybe too early 53-man roster prediction for the San Francisco 49ers. Kicking things off, we are going to start off with the quarterback position, and I'm going to have us keeping two guys on the 53-man roster. The first one is, of course, going to be Trey Lance. He is the future of the franchise. He is the face of the franchise moving forward, and as someone who I'm really excited to see what he can do in 2022. I do think that you'll see this offense look a little bit different with Trey Lance under center as opposed to Garoppolo. I think we're going to push the ball down the field a lot more, especially drafting Danny Gray, bringing in Ray McCloud. I think you're going to see us push the ball and really try and force defenses to respect that aspect of the offense, and that'll really free things up underneath for Deebo, for Aiyuk, for Kittle, and also for our run game. And the run game will, of course, still be what we build the offense from. We're going to do a bunch of play actions, things like that. We're going to run the ball a lot, but I do expect us to push the ball down the field, and I think we're going to have some really good success with that. Now, as his backup, I'm going to go with Nate Sudfeld. He's someone who's been with the team for a little while. He's a veteran in this league. We gave him a one-year deal, $2 million, fully guaranteed, so I don't think we're going to have any interest in cutting him and just taking that hit. So now that does leave some questions. Of course, there's Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, I just really don't see a situation where Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the team come opening day. The only way I could see that happening is if Trey Lance gets hurt, and of course, we definitely hope that doesn't happen. Ultimately, I think he either gets cut or he gets traded to a team that maybe has a quarterback injury in preseason or something to that effect. I did speak about in that video that I put out yesterday. The other quarterback to talk about is going to be Mr. Irrelevant, and that is Brock Purdy. I think ultimately he's going to be a guy that we're going to put on the practice squad. I do like his potential looking at a number of Iowa State games. He does actually remind me a little bit of Garoppolo more than anything, but something that you really like is that he was a 4-year starter, threw the ball a bunch of times, and ultimately I think he's someone that maybe in 2023 could be the backup to Trey Lance. And I think a best case scenario and a somewhat likely scenario for Brock Purdy could maybe be like a Colt McCoy type career, a backup guy who can ultimately maybe come in for a couple of games and maybe win you a couple of games. And that's really all you can ask for when you take a quarterback in the 7th round. Solid pick, but in this scenario, he does not make the 53-man roster. Next up, we have the running back position, and I'm going to include the fullback here as well. So I have us keeping 5 backs, and that's going to be Elijah Mitchell, it's going to be Trey Sermon, it's going to be Jeff Wilson Jr., it's going to be TDP, Ty Davis Price, and then of course we're going to have Pro Bowl, All-Pro, Kyle Juszczyk. So the reason why I'm going with these guys is that these guys I think really complement each other really well. Now the missing piece here, of course, would be JaMycal Hasty. Now to me, Hasty is a solid back, don't get me wrong, and I think if possible we would like to stash him on the practice squad. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if another team picks him up. Or, honestly, this running back competition is going to be fierce. You're going to have Elijah Mitchell, who burst onto the scene in his rookie year. Trey Sermon, who's going to want to bounce back after a not-so-spectacular rookie year, being a 3rd-round pick. Then you have TDP coming in as a 3rd-round pick running back for the 49ers, who's going to want to show that he was worth that pick and also just really cement himself in this Kyle Shanahan offense. And then, of course, you have veteran Jeff Wilson Jr. He's a guy who competes, really physical running back, and really one of those guys that as the game goes on to like the 3rd and the 4th quarter, he's a guy who can be really valuable. I love this running back group. It's a bummer to lose out on Hasty in this prediction, but that's my group I'm going to go with. Moving on to the wide receivers. Now, I'm going to have us keeping 6 guys. Deebo Samuel, of course, and Brandon Aiyuk will be the starting receivers on the outside. Then we have Jauan Jennings, who came on so strong last year, especially towards the end of the year. I think he's going to have a fantastic 2022 season. For the other guys after that, I have free agent Ray McCloud, free agent Malik Turner. Then I also have rookie Danny Gray. Now, why am I going with these guys? Well, we all know about what Deebo can do, what Aiyuk can do, and what Jauan Jennings can do. So let's talk about the others really quickly. Ray McCloud, decent receiver. I think a solid number 4, number 5 receiver, but clearly brought in for his special teams abilities, being able to return kicks, sometimes returning punts, and that's really where some value is going to be, along with being able to play receiver. Malik Turner, I really like his size, really intriguing size. I think potentially down in like red zone situations, there's certain opportunities for mismatches, so I like Malik Turner. And then of course, rookie Danny Gray, who just absolutely flies when he's out on the field. I wouldn't be surprised to actually see him, and maybe later in the year, to see him really start getting some reps, jet sweeps, all different kinds of things we do, similar to how we use Deebo. Not that they're the same player, but just trying to get the ball into Gray's hands in space, let him use that speed. Also, just send him on go routes and really open up things underneath. This is a really, really good wide receiver room, and especially because it seems like Deebo Samuel will be staying a 49er. Moving on to the tight end position, and this will actually be unchanged from the 2021 season. Of course, headlined by George Kittle, all-pro, best all-around tight end in the game, backed up by Dwelley and Charlie Woerner. Dwelley, who's a decent receiver, can line up in a few different positions, and of course knows the offense really well. Charlie Woerner, very decent blocker, receiving still needs improvement, but also knows the offense pretty well. This was actually a position that I thought we would look to upgrade in the draft, but we didn't spend any draft picks on tight ends, which to me was quite surprising because there were some guys in the draft who I really liked, but we didn't go in that direction. Now, I wouldn't be surprised once training camp opens up, once we maybe move some contracts around, Jimmy Garoppolo, that we bring in some tight ends to compete at the position. Possible guys I'm looking at is maybe like Tyler Kroft or an Eric Ebron as veteran guys, or else we bring back, familiar faces, Levine Toilolo, who's also a very accomplished blocker in his own right, who did play with the 49ers before, and Caden Smith, who we drafted out of Stanford a number of years ago, who was cut by the Giants. So there are options out there, but I think overall this is a really solid group. Rounding out the offense, we're going to be talking about the offensive line, and I'm going to have us keeping 9 guys, which would ultimately put the offense at 25 players. So let's start off with the starting line. Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Alex Mack, Daniel Brunskill, Mike McGlinchey. So all of these guys are basically returning from last year. Aaron Banks will be filling in for Laken Tomlinson, who's now with the New York Jets. Let's talk about some of the backups right there. So we have Dohnovan West, undrafted free agent out of Arizona State, someone who I thought could have easily gone in the 4th round. Excellent fit for this offense, the zone blocking, and gets to learn from a great veteran center like Alex Mack, so it's a wonderful fit. Hopefully 2023 he'll be ready to go to be the starter at center. We also have rookie Spencer Burford, who we took in the 4th round. He's someone who played tackle, played guard in college, so really good position versatility. Gotta love that. I think ultimately his future is going to be at guard with the 49ers, but it's always good to have those players who can play multiple positions. After that, we're going to have Jaylon entering his 2nd year in limited time in 2021. He looked pretty good. I think he has potential to get even better, and I think he's someone who I would feel comfortable with. Let's say if we do have an injury on the offensive line, I'm comfortable with Jaylon coming in to play a few games. Last but not least, it's going to be Colton McKivitz. Now, McKivitz played Week 18 at the Rams last year, and they have a pretty darn good pass rushing group. That was the biggest game of the season to that point. He filled in for Trent Williams and played admirably. I think he did a really solid job. You didn't really hear his name being called too often, so for an offensive lineman, that's a good game right there. Couple of guys who didn't make it. So Jason Poe, he would be my 54th player if it was a 54-man roster. He's someone who's absolutely a priority to keep on the practice squad. Great fit for the offense. He's an undrafted player out of Mercer. Really, really versatile, really athletic. So I wouldn't be surprised ultimately if he does make the roster, but in this situation, he doesn't. Couple of other guys, Justin School. I think he's someone we might look to trade when another team, or if another team suffers an injury at the tackle position. Just really wouldn't make the cut here, and we maybe want to give him a chance for an opportunity elsewhere, and also maybe get some draft capital in return. Last but not least, Jake Brendel, backup center, veteran guy. He's been in the league for a number of years. I think he's someone who, if we suffered an injury at center, we would bring him back in. He's familiar with the offense, but at this point, I would rather keep someone with the potential of a Dohnovan West or a Jason Poe over bringing back Jake Brendel. So that's going to be it for the offense. We're now going to move on to the defensive side of the ball, and that's going to be a whole lot of fun. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to start with the edge position. I'm going to have us keeping 6 guys. Of course, the headliner in this group is going to be Nick Bosa, in my book, an all-world, all-pro guy. After that, we have rookie Drake Jackson, second-round pick out of USC, someone who's a perfect fit for this wide 9 defense, extremely athletic, and a really solid pass rush moves. I think when you couple that with the coaching from Chris Kasorik and them playing in a defense that really fits his skills, I think he could actually have an immediate impact. You know, he'll be one of those guys that in obvious passing situations, I think we put him in there and we just say, hey, get after the quarterback, basically. After that, we have Samson Ebukam, someone who we signed last offseason. Now, to me, he's someone who I think we'd probably look to restructure his contract, maybe extend him to reduce his cap hit this year, but I really like what he did, especially towards the end of 2021. After that, Kerry Hyder, so we brought him back. He was with the 49ers in 2020, had arguably his best year as a pro with the 49ers. Again, another guy who's just a perfect fit for this defense, really responded well to the coaching of Kasorik, and I think he's someone who's going to be really excellent depth, can also play on base downs too. After that, Charles Omenihu. He's someone that we traded for during the season last year, really made some plays for us down the stretch, so I like his potential, and I think he's someone that we definitely want to keep around. And last but not least is going to be free agent Kimoko Trey, who we brought in just before the draft, someone who I believe could have an Arden Key type season for the 49ers, and then go on, earn some big money elsewhere, and then give us a nice compensatory pick. So the one name that's really standing out to me that's missing from this list is going to be Jordan Willis. Of course, he had that massive play against Green Bay on special teams in the playoffs last year, but overall, when you have a deep, talented group like we do at edge, unfortunately, a good player is going to get cut. Moving to the defensive tackle position, and I'm going to have 4 guys right here. It's going to be headlined by Eric Armstead. The guy is an absolute stud. I think he's someone who really does need to play inside. He's so quick off the snap, and he can really just penetrate those gaps. And someone who just played really well down the stretch for us, and we know what Eric Armstead can do. After that, Javon Kinlaw. Now, here's a guy with just crazy potential. I think he's someone who, from all reports, he's looking like he's going to be in the best shape of his life. He was able to get the surgery on his knee, so he's someone who I'm really expecting a big 2022 season, and if we want to have a top 5 defense, it really is going to come down to what Javon Kinlaw can bring to the 49ers. After that, we have a lot of potential. So Kevin Givens and Maurice Hurst. These are both young guys, both guys who've flashed in limited time, but they're somewhat unproven. Maurice Hurst is someone who I'm really intrigued by. He was pretty good with the Raiders, but he was hurt for most of last season with the 49ers. But I think, give him some time with Kasorik in this defense, which really fits his skills. I think he could really excel and really surprise and ultimately be an ideal guy to replace the production that we got from DJ Jones. Moving on to arguably our best position group, and that's going to be the linebackers. And I'm going to have us keeping 5 guys. Of course, Fred Woerner. He's an all-pro guy. He's someone who, I really like, but did have a bit of a down year in 2021. And what I mean by that is he was very solid, kind of in the right place at the right time. But the thing that he was really lacking last season was those big game-changing plays throughout the regular season, whether it's a big-time sack, whether it's a turnover. So I'm really hoping he can rebound and make those plays in 2022. Behind him, we're going to have Dre Greenlaw and Azeez Al-Shaair. Both guys are young players, Greenlaw, 5th round pick, Al-Shaair, undrafted, guys with a lot of potential, and they are really excelling in this defense. Al-Shaair, in particular, was awesome last year, filling in for Greenlaw and filling in for Woerner at times too. Greenlaw came back after an injury early in the year, and in the playoffs looked really good, really aggressive, so you gotta like that. After those guys, we're going to have Oren Burks and Demmetrius Flannigan-Fowles. Now with Burks, we brought him in as a free agent. He's someone who with a lot of special teams abilities, and that's the primary reason why we brought him in, but someone who I think has played, some linebacker in Green Bay, someone who I did like coming out of Vanderbilt, so I think he does have potential to grow as a player at the linebacker position, and someone who fits this defense well. Same thing really goes for Demmetrius Flannigan-Fowles. He's been with us for a few years now, can play some special teams, and also knows the the defense really well and extremely athletic, which is good in this kind of defense. So overall, really, really happy with this linebacker group. Now moving on to the cornerbacks, and this was a group that in 2021 was not good, to say the least, but I think we have done a great job addressing those needs there. So I'm going to have us keeping 6 guys here. Now, the starting outside cornerbacks to me, Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Moseley, both guys, Ward we brought in as a free agent from Kansas City. By all accounts, should be a number 1 cornerback, someone who can really match up well with a lot of number 1 receivers, and there's a whole bunch of those guys in our division, so really happy to have him here. Emmanuel Moseley, we know what he can do. Really, really solid cornerback. After that, we're going to have Ambry Thomas as a rookie. It took him a little while to get accustomed to the defense and, the NFL game, and he had a couple of rough outings, notably in Cincinnati, but overall, I think he really came on strong and is someone who I'm really excited to see his development. After that, we're going to have Jason Verrett, who we brought back on a 1-year deal. Now, at this moment in time, he's healthy, and if he's healthy, he can potentially be another number 1 cornerback in this league. So right now, we're looking at 4 guys who can play and play well. After that, I'm actually going to go with Samuel Womack as our rookie 5th-round pick out of Toledo, someone who really fits the mold of a nickelback, just incredible length, incredibly athletic, and if he can really develop, I think I really like what he can do moving forward to ultimately be the replacement for K'Wan Williams. Last but not least, it's a guy that we'll just never get rid of, and that's Dontae Johnson. Now, I think he's been a bit of a punching bag sometimes for 49er fans on Twitter and things like that, but overall, really solid guy, veteran guy at this point, knows the defense like the back of his hand, and I think would be a good mentor to a lot of the good young cornerbacks that we have right here. Now, a couple of guys who are going to be missing from this list: Deommodore Lenoir, Tariq Castro-Fields, to name a few. Now, I think those guys are going to be destined for the practice squad. What could end up happening, and look, this is the NFL, players get hurt. Now, obviously, if someone gets hurt, I'd love to see those guys on the 53-man roster, but in this scenario, they don't make the cut, and they'll be on the practice squad. To finish up the defense, we're going to move to the safety position. I'm going to have us keeping 4 safeties on the roster, and that would also put our defense at 25 players. Now, with the safety group, that's going to be headlined by Jimmy Ward, someone who I think around the league is criminally underrated. I think he's a really, really good player, always in the right place at the right time, and showed last year that he does have the ability to make some big-time plays. After that, I'm going to have Charvarius Moore. Now, he's someone who I think really has good potential, and I was really bummed when he got hurt last year because he's extremely athletic, someone who can fly around, make plays, and I think he's someone who will be the primary guy to start opposite Jimmy Ward, and I think the 49ers like his potential to be much more of a playmaker compared to Jaquiski Tartt. Now, I'm a big fan of Tartt. He's another guy a bit like Jimmy Ward, where in the right place at the right time. Of course, he does sometimes struggle to make the big play, but overall, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing back Tartt. I would be in favor of it, but in this scenario, I'm going to go with maybe what I think the 49ers would do, and that's keeping Charvarius Moore as a starter opposite Jimmy Ward. After that, we brought in George Odom, another really special teams kind of guy, but can play if needed. Played last year for the Colts and played pretty darn well. And then we're going to round this group out with Talanoa Hufanga, who had a good, really solid rookie year by all accounts, and someone who will obviously want to keep on the roster and keep developing. So overall, I think the defense on paper is looking stacked, so I'm really excited also to see what DeMeco Ryans in his second year as defensive coordinator can do with this group. Last, but certainly not least, is going to be special teams and a kicker, of course, Robbie Gould, punter Mish Wishnowsky, long snapper Tabor Pepper. And overall, this is a really solid group. I think some people were looking for an improvement at the punter. I think Wishnowsky is solid, not spectacular, but solid. I was kind of hoping a little bit more when we took him in the 4th round that he would be a little bit better than what he's shown, but we'll see. We do have a new special teams coordinator, Brian Schneider, who did get a lot out of players in Seattle, so I'm excited to what he can bring to San Francisco, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we use Wishnowsky's, athleticism, and maybe we see a couple of fake punts. We haven't really seen that much in the Kyle Shanahan era with Richard Hightower as the special teams coordinator, so I'll be curious if we see that in 2022. Overall, that's my whole 53-man roster for now. Of course, I'll be doing more videos on this throughout the rest of the offseason and leading up to week 1. This was just my first, way too early kind of shot at it. And so let me know what you guys think about my list, anyone that you think that I should have included that I didn't. And of course, feel free to leave your comments. I always love, interacting with you guys, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this 53-man roster. But I'm going to leave it there, and you guys know I'm going to say 2 things. The butt counts, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side.